Black Jesus was never meant to be painted white. Lucifer's fall may never have happened the way you were told. For centuries, empires crowned themselves with a gospel of fear, reshaping the image of Christ into a figure of power, while burying the voices of Ethiopia, the guardian of forbidden books. This is not just history. It is the story of your faith, the hidden war for your soul. Imagine opening a Bible stripped of 15 sacred books. Imagine kneeling before a portrait of Jesus that looks nothing like the man of sorrows who walked among the oppressed. Imagine being told that Lucifer was cast into fire forever, when ancient scrolls whisper that he still roams the courts of heaven as a tester, an accuser, permitted to refine the hearts of men. Why were these truths hidden? Why did Rome silence them? And what if the story you were given was the empire's greatest lie? In this video, you will uncover the shocking truth of Ethiopia's Bible, a canon of 81 books older and more complete than the one most of the world holds today. You will see how the image of a black Christ changes the gospel from oppression to liberation. You will hear why the myth of Lucifer's fall may have been created not to save souls, but to control them. And you will realize that the greatest battle is not fought in the heavens, but in the story you choose to believe. So let me ask you, if the Christ you were shown was the Christ of empire, and the devil you were taught to fear was the invention of politics, what will you believe now? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is more than history. It is a revelation. And if you feel the power of this message stirring something inside you, subscribe, like, and stay with us, because together we will step into the hidden truth the world tried to erase. Ethiopia, the guardian of forbidden books. For 3,000 years, whispers have risen from the mountains of Ethiopia, not whispers of conquest or empire, but whispers of a nation guarding treasures that kings could not steal and popes could not erase. Imagine a land where the Ark of the Covenant is said to rest, where monks keep vigil day and night over a chest that once held the tablets of Moses. Whether you believe it or not, the fact remains, Ethiopia has carried a testimony untouched by empire. While Rome built cathedrals and Europe crowned emperors, Ethiopia hid in stone churches carved into the earth itself, keeping alive scriptures the West declared forbidden. The Book of Enoch, long erased from Western Bibles, was sung aloud in Ethiopian liturgy. The Book of Jubilees, forgotten in Europe, was still copied by African hands. Their Bible grew into 81 books, far larger than the 66 books many of us were handed today. What does that mean? It means the version of Christianity preserved in Ethiopia may be older, fuller, and closer to the original faith than what empire gave us. This is not just history, it is a mirror. If they preserved more, then what have we been missing? Have we inherited an incomplete gospel, trimmed to serve rulers instead of truth? This thought unsettles us because it strikes at the heart of identity. If the Bible itself can be cut, what else was altered? Ethiopia's existence forces us to reckon with the uncomfortable question, do we follow the Christ of empire or the Christ of covenant? Comment your thoughts, because this is where history begins to collide with faith itself. Black Jesus, the image that changes everything. Walk into the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela and look at the murals. You will not see the pale, blue-eyed Jesus of Western cathedrals. You will see a Christ with dark skin, eyes burning with compassion, hair coiled like the children of Africa. To Western eyes, this was once mocked as heresy, dismissed as primitive art. But to the Ethiopians it was truth. Their Messiah looked like them, walked among them, shared their suffering. Why does this matter? Because the face you give to the Messiah shapes the gospel you preach. A whitewashed Christ blesses empires, crowns, and armies. A black Christ lifts the oppressed, sits beside the enslaved, and proclaims liberation. Imagine an enslaved African in America being told to bow to a white Christ who resembled their master. The message was submission. Now imagine that same soul hearing of Ethiopia, where Jesus was painted black, where faith had never bowed to Europe. The message was hope. That vision ignited movements of resistance, from the hidden prayers of slaves to the cries of Martin Luther King Jr. and the prophetic fire of liberation theology. The image is not cosmetic, it is cosmic. Change the color of Christ, and you change the direction of theology. One vision teaches obedience to rulers, the other proclaims freedom to captives. Which one speaks to you? Which one reflects the Jesus of the Beatitudes, the one who blessed the meek, the mourning, the poor in spirit? This is more than race. It is about who God stands with. And Ethiopia has whispered for centuries, He stands with us. He looks like us. He walks with us. The gospel was never about crowns on heads, but about crosses on shoulders. And that truth is as healing as it is disruptive. Lucifer, the Western lie, and the Ethiopian revelation. For generations we were told the same tale. Lucifer, the brightest of angels, grew proud, rebelled against God, and was hurled into eternal fire. It is carved into sermons, hymns, and Sunday school lessons. But open the Bible itself, and the ground shakes beneath your feet. Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28, the very passages used to craft this myth, were taunts against earthly kings, Babylon and Tyre, men who exalted themselves as gods. The fall described was not of an angel in heaven, but of rulers on earth. Yet Rome took those verses, stretched them, and built a cosmic drama. Why? Because a myth of rebellion served empire well. If Lucifer was the archetype of rebellion, then to resist empire was to imitate Satan. To question Rome was to fall like the devil. Fear became theology, and theology became obedience. But Ethiopia remembered something different. Their manuscripts preserved a vision of the accuser still roaming heaven's court, permitted to test, to accuse, to refine. Think of the book of Job. Satan walks into the assembly of God and asks permission to test Job. He is not hurled into hell. He is tolerated as an examiner. The Ethiopian scrolls echo this, describing Lucifer not only as fallen, but as tester. His power is chained, his role limited, but his presence reveals the authenticity of human faith. That is not a myth of terror. It is a theology of endurance. Every trial you face, every temptation you endure, every whisper of doubt, these are not random cruelties. They are the furnace where gold is purified. The devil is not God's equal rival. He is an unwilling servant of a greater plan. And this truth, if believed, shatters fear as a weapon of control. Imagine if Christians knew the devil was not ruling in fire but restrained, permitted only to test within God's limits. Fear would collapse and courage would rise. That is why Rome buried this teaching, because a fearless people cannot be ruled by terror. Ethiopia preserved it, and today it speaks again. The greatest danger is not that Lucifer fell, but that we believe the wrong story about him. The real war is not fought in fire but in narrative. Believe the lie, and you are bound. Believe the truth, and you are free. And that freedom is the heartbeat of the gospel. Ethiopia never surrendered. Lucifer the tester, not just the fallen. What if the greatest deception was not that Lucifer rebelled, but that his story was reduced to a single fiery fall? In the Ethiopian scrolls, the devil is not simply banished to a pit of flames, screaming against heaven. He is still seen in the courtroom of God, an accuser, a tester, a shadow permitted to refine the hearts of men. This is a vision that turns our understanding upside down. Instead of an eternal war between two equal rivals, the devil becomes an unwilling servant, chained but allowed to press against human faith. Think of gold in a furnace. The fire is not friendly, yet it exposes what is pure. Every temptation you face, every storm that shakes your soul, may be more than chaos. It may be the furnace where your loyalty to God is revealed. Even Paul spoke of a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan, and yet he said God's grace was enough. The message is clear. Trials are not proof of abandonment, but proof that heaven is near. If you have ever wondered why hardship clings to you, the Ethiopian testimony whispers, it is not to destroy you, it is to reveal you. This truth heals because it transforms suffering into purpose. Instead of drowning in fear, you rise with courage. Instead of believing the empire's lie that the devil rules in fire, you see him as nothing more than a tester on a leash, a shadow under God's sovereignty. That realization alone can set your heart free. Share in the comments if you've ever felt tested beyond measure, and consider what it means if even that storm was permitted to refine your soul. The cosmic courtroom. When the universe puts you on trial. Picture the heavens as a vast courtroom. At the center is the judge of all creation, clothed in majesty. To one side stands the accuser, pointing his finger, whispering that you are weak, unfaithful, unworthy. To the other side stands your advocate, Jesus Christ, interceding with scarred hands that prove your worth. This is not poetry. It is the biblical vision carried from the book of Job into the Ethiopian manuscripts. Life itself is not random. Every word, every thought, every choice is weighed in this courtroom of eternity. That is why trials come, not as accidents, but as moments of revelation. The enemy insists, take away their blessings, and they will curse you. And heaven allows the test, not because God delights in suffering, but because faith must be proven real. Think of fire touching gold. It does not destroy, it purifies. In the same way, every challenge in your life reveals whether your devotion is painted on or written in your heart. This is both terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because it reminds us we cannot hide. Empowering because it reminds us that the verdict is never in the accuser's hands. Christ is your defender, your intercessor, your eternal advocate. When the devil speaks, he can accuse but never decide. He can test but never triumph where faith holds firm. This vision shatters the Western myth of a devil raging freely in hell. Instead, it shows us a restrained prosecutor, tolerated only for a season, while the final authority rests with God. And in that knowledge, every believer finds hope. Your suffering is not meaningless, your endurance is not wasted, your pain is not the end. It is the trial that proves your crown. If this strikes you deeply, write in the comments how you've seen trials transform you, because testimony itself is a weapon in this cosmic courtroom. The Scriptures. Rome erased. Who decided your faith? Here lies the question most fear to ask. Who chose which books would define your faith? The Bible you hold may be powerful, but is it complete? Ethiopia's Bible carries 81 books, 15 more than the Protestant canon, several more than the Catholic. Books like Enoch and Jubilees, quoted even by the apostles, erased by councils, silenced by Rome, yet preserved in the mountains of Africa. Why? Because they spoke of truths too dangerous for empire. They revealed angels who fell, watchers who corrupted mankind, cosmic battles that unfolded before Adam ever drew breath. They painted a universe alive with conflict where rulers were not the final authority. For an empire demanding obedience, such visions were unacceptable. Councils in Nicaea and Carthage decided which voices to silence, which scriptures to discard, and the faith of generations was pruned to fit the throne. But Ethiopia refused to cut. Monks continued to sing Enoch, to teach Jubilees, to preserve a Christ who was bigger than empire and a devil who was more than myth. Imagine what we lost when those books were removed. Imagine how different our understanding of evil, angels, and the Messiah would be if those pages were never erased. This is not just about history, it is about trust. If empire could decide what books remain, what else did it decide about your faith? The Ethiopian witness confronts us with a haunting truth. Your gospel may have been edited, your Bible may have been trimmed. The Christ you were shown may have been painted. That realization calls us to humility and to courage, to return not to the empire's version, but to the full testimony of God. This is why Ethiopia matters, because in their scriptures we see not only what Rome erased, but what heaven preserved, and in their testimony we find a call to reclaim the parts of faith that were silenced. What do you think? Should these forgotten books be read again today? Leave your answer below, because your voice in this conversation is part of the rediscovery itself. The lie of the fall. When religion became politics. For centuries we have been told that the fall of Lucifer was the most terrifying event in heaven's history. But what if the real lie was not his pride, not his rebellion, but the way the empire used the story to control the world? Rome took fragments of prophecy, words aimed at kings of Babylon and Tyre, and twisted them into a myth of cosmic rebellion. Suddenly, rebellion itself became satanic. To resist rulers was to imitate the devil. To question authority was to fall like Lucifer. Do you see the brilliance of this manipulation? Fear became law, theology became obedience, and obedience became empire's greatest weapon. The story of Lucifer's fall was not just a sermon, it was propaganda, a tool to silence dissent and sanctify power. Yet Ethiopia remembered another truth. Their scrolls never reduced the adversary to a single fiery exile. Instead, they remembered him as the accuser, still permitted in heaven's court, testing and refining humanity. This truth does not inspire fear. It inspires courage. It does not command obedience to empire. It calls for endurance in trial. That is why it was buried, because fearless people cannot be enslaved. Think of every age when power used fear to silence. From the Middle Ages to modern governments, rulers know one thing. If they can control the story of evil, they can control the people. Ethiopia's witness breaks that chain. The lie of the fall is exposed, and the truth whispers freedom. What do you think? Was Lucifer's story reshaped to serve politics more than prophecy? Write your thoughts, because every voice that questions the empire's lie is part of breaking its power. Black Christ versus white theology, the battle that still rages. Look at the paintings in European cathedrals. A pale Christ crowned like Caesar, clothed in royal robes, enthroned above peasants. Now look at Ethiopia, a black Christ with eyes like fire, standing among the poor, lifting the oppressed, carved into stone churches built by hands that never bowed to Rome. These are not just different images, they are different theologies. A white Christ blesses empire, colonization, and chains. A black Christ promises liberation, endurance, and hope in the night of slavery. When Africans were dragged across oceans in chains, they were told to bow to a god who looked like their masters. But when they heard whispers of Ethiopia, where Jesus looked like them, they found strength to resist. Martin Luther King Jr. drew from that vision when he preached that justice rolls down like waters. Liberation movements across the world were fueled by the idea that God looks like the oppressed, not the oppressors. This is why Ethiopia's testimony terrified the Church of Empire, because a Christ who looks like the poor cannot be used to justify conquest. He overturns thrones. He breaks chains. He calls the meek blessed and the mighty judged. And this battle is not over. Even today, the image of Christ preached in many pulpits reflects more empire than gospel. The question still hangs in the air: which Christ do we follow? The Christ of palaces or the Christ of peasants? The Christ of empire or the Christ of Ethiopia? Write in the comments, do you believe the true gospel is found in crowns or in crosses? Because once you answer that, you reveal which kingdom you truly serve. The final war, truth versus narrative. The greatest war of all time is not fought with swords, bombs, or armies. It is fought with stories. Whoever controls the story controls the soul. Rome told the world of a devil cast down in flames, terrifying rebels into obedience. Ethiopia whispered another truth, that the true weapon of the adversary is not rebellion, but deception. From Eden to empire, his power has never been brute force, but the subtle twist of words. Did God really say? That one question began humanity's fall. The greatest tragedy is not that Satan was hurled down, but that humanity believed his lie. And the greatest victory will not come when fire destroys him, but when truth destroys his deception. This is why Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Freedom is not found in fear. Freedom is found in truth. And that is why Ethiopia's vision matters today. It unmasks the lie. It reminds us that the enemy's strength is borrowed, temporary, and only as powerful as the stories we believe. Look around the modern world. Wars are fought first with propaganda. Nations enslaved, not by chains, but by narratives. Families divided, churches weakened, communities torn apart, all because of stories twisted into weapons. This is the battlefield of our generation. The question is not, did Lucifer fall? The question is, will you fall for his lie? Every day you are offered two stories, the empire's narrative of fear and control, or Christ's narrative of freedom and endurance. The choice is yours. And this choice is not abstract. It is deeply personal. Which story do you live by? Share your thoughts below, because the war of narratives is still raging, and your voice might awaken someone else to the truth. The story of Black Jesus and the truth about Lucifer's fall is not just about history. It is about your soul, your identity, your freedom. For too long, the world has been told a version of the gospel edited by empires, painted by rulers, shaped by fear. But Ethiopia kept another flame alive. In its mountains, monks whispered prayers over forbidden books, preserving scriptures that Rome erased, guarding a vision of Christ that looked nothing like Caesar. This is not a tale of dusty manuscripts. It is a living rebuke to every lie that said salvation must wear a white face, or that rebellion against empire was the same as rebellion against God. The message of Ethiopia is raw, dangerous, liberating. Jesus walks with the oppressed, and even the devil himself is not the equal rival of God, but a chained tester, tolerated only for a season, an examiner whose very presence proves your faith. Think about what this means for you. Every trial you have endured, every sleepless night, every whisper of doubt, you thought it meant God had abandoned you. But what if those fires were the very furnace where your faith was purified? What if your tears were counted, your struggles permitted, not to crush you, but to reveal you as gold? The empire told you to fear the fall of Lucifer, but Ethiopia tells you instead to see through the lie. The devil's greatest weapon is not rebellion, but deception. He conquers when you believe the wrong story about yourself. He wins when you bow to the lie that you are forgotten, unloved, powerless. And that is why this story matters, because once you see the truth, you are free. Imagine standing in that cosmic courtroom. The accuser points at you, listing your failures, your sins, your fears. But then your advocate rises, Jesus Christ, scarred hands lifted, declaring that your life has already been redeemed. The courtroom falls silent. The verdict is not guilty, not because you were perfect, but because the Son of God stands beside you. That is the truth Rome wanted hidden. That is the truth Ethiopia refused to erase. And that is the truth you must hold on to today. When you picture Jesus, do not see a distant king in marble palaces. See a black Christ walking the dusty roads, laughing with children, healing the broken, carrying the cross for you. When you think of the devil, do not imagine a god of fire ruling hell. See a chained accuser, permitted only to test, whose voice is loud but whose leash is short. And when you think of yourself, do not see a pawn of empire. See a child of God, chosen, refined, made for freedom. This is not just theology, it is personal. Because right now, someone listening to these words is carrying chains of fear, shame, and doubt. But hear me, you are not forgotten, you are not abandoned. The Christ who walks with the oppressed walks with you. The trials you face are not the end. They are the proving ground of your soul. Lift your head. Your story is not written by empire, not defined by fear, not silenced by lies. Your story is written by God, and no empire can edit his script. And here is the healing truth. The greatest war is not outside you, but inside you. In the story you believe the lie and you fall. Believe the truth and you rise. Freedom is not waiting for heaven. It begins the moment you choose to reject the empire's narrative and live by the story of Christ. Every day you decide whose voice you trust. The question is no longer, did Lucifer fall? The question is, will you fall for his lie? If these words have stirred something in your spirit, let it out. Comment what truth has set you free. Share this video so someone else can break their chains. And if you feel this message brought value to your soul, if it helped you find light in dark days, then I invite you to support with a little energy so I can keep creating and sharing the word. Every like, every subscribe, every word of encouragement. It may seem small, but to me, it is priceless. Together, we carry this truth further than empire ever imagined. So remember this, the Christ of empire was painted to keep you silent. The Christ of Ethiopia was preserved to set you free. The devil's greatest trick is not his fall, it is his lie. And the greatest victory of your life will come when you choose to believe the truth of the gospel instead of the stories of fear. The time has come to rise. The time has come to reclaim the faith that was stolen. The time has come to walk in freedom. And as long as you hold on to that truth, no lie will ever own you again.